The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a postal worker who seemed almost apologetic as he handed it over. I stood on the wraparound porch of my family's ranch house, the same porch where my grandfather had sat every evening watching the sunset over the valley, and tore open the envelope with dirt-stained fingers. "Notice of violation and mandatory compliance," screamed the header in bold red letters. My heart sank as I read further. The Silverdale Heights Homeowners Association, an organization I didn't even know existed until 6 months ago, was ordering me to demolish my century-old ranch house within 24 hours. 24 hours. The structure they claimed was an eyesore and violated their newly established community aesthetic standards. I looked up at the house. Weathered with siding, yes. In need of paint, absolutely. But an eyesore? This was my heritage, my blood, my family's legacy standing on 20 acres that had been in our family since 1897. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone and called my lawyer, Tom Chin. "They can't do this, right?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Tell me they can't do this, Tom." There was a long pause on the other end. Too long. "Marcus," Tom finally said, his voice heavy with something that sounded like defeat. "When did you last check your property boundaries?" What does that have to do with anything?" "Just check them. Use the county records. Call me back." 3 hours later, I sat in the county assessor's office, staring at maps that made my stomach turn. The boundaries I'd known my entire life, the boundaries my father and grandfather had shown me, were wrong. Not by much, just by 40 feet on the eastern edge. But those 40 feet made all the difference. My ranch house, the barn, and most of the outbuildings sat on those 40 feet. The land wasn't mine anymore. Through a series of legal maneuvers I didn't fully understand, involving old debt, unpaid property taxes from decades ago, and Byzantine property law, the HOA had acquired that narrow strip of land, and now they wanted me gone. I drove home in a daze, watching the sun set over the mountains, wondering if this would be my last sunset on this porch. The HOA president, a woman named Patricia Caldwell, had left 3 voicemails while I was at the county office, each one more aggressive than the last. The final message was crystal clear. "Mr. Rivera, this is your final warning. You have until noon tomorrow to begin demolition, or we will take legal action and bill you for the demolition costs. We've already contracted the work. This neighborhood is moving forward, with or without you." That night, I sat at my grandfather's old desk and went through every paper, every deed, every document in the family archive. That's when I found it, a yellowed envelope marked "Water Rights and Easements, 1923. My hands shook as I unfolded the ancient paper inside. The document stated clearly that my great-grandfather, Eduardo Rivera, had sold water rights to the entire valley, including what was now the Silverdale Heights development, but had retained permanent easement control. The development of 847 homes, their pools, their landscape lawns, their very existence, depended on water that flowed through pipes my family technically controlled. But there was more. At the bottom of the box, I found survey maps from 1952. These maps showed something the modern surveys didn't: the original property line markers, set in concrete and marked with brass plaques bearing my family name. If these markers still existed, if I could find them, they would supersede the county's recent boundary determinations. I didn't sleep that night. At 4 a.m., with a flashlight and a metal detector borrowed from my neighbor, I started searching the eastern edge of the property. The grass was tall, the ground uneven, and twice I nearly gave up. Then, at 6:47 a.m., just as the sun began to paint the sky pink, the metal detector screamed. I dropped to my knees and dug with my bare hands. 6 inches down, covered in decades of soil and roots, I found it, a brass plaque, oxidized green but clearly readable. Rivera property line, established 1923. I found 3 more within the hour. They told a clear story. My property line was exactly where my grandfather had always said it was. The county had made a mistake. My ranch house stood on Rivera land, and always had. At 9 a.m., with my lawyer and a licensed surveyor in tow, I stood on my porch as 3 demolition trucks rolled up my driveway. Patricia Caldwell stepped out of a silver BMW, dressed in a cream pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. Mr. Rivera, she said, her smile sharp as a knife. I see you're being reasonable. The crew will have this structure down by. Stop, I said calmly. Nobody touches anything. Her smile faltered. Excuse me. Tom stepped forward, handing her a folder. These are the original property markers, verified this morning by a licensed surveyor. The county's boundary determination was incorrect. This property, including all structures, belongs entirely to Mr. Rivera and always has. Patricia's face went from pale to red to purple in the span of seconds. This is impossible. We had lawyers review everything. Your lawyers made a mistake, Tom said. But that's not the interesting part. He handed her a second folder, this one much thicker. What's this? She demanded. That, I said, stepping off the porch, is a copy of the 1923 Water Rights Agreement. My family owns the water rights to every drop that flows to Silverdale Heights. That's 847 homes, Mrs. Caldwell. She opened the folder, her hands shaking now. This can't be enforced. This is ancient. Water rights in this state don't expire, Tom said cheerfully. They're property, just like land. Mr. Rivera has been allowing the HOA to use his family's water out of courtesy. But courtesy is a two-way street. Patricia looked at me, and I saw something crumble behind her eyes. What do you want? I thought about my grandfather, about the stories he'd told me on this porch, about how the Rivera family had helped build this valley, had shared their resources, had been good neighbors for generations, and about how some people mistake kindness for weakness. I want a new agreement, I said. The water rights lease you didn't know you needed. The standard rate for agricultural water rights in this county is approximately $200 per acre-foot. For residential development, especially luxury homes like yours, the rate is typically 10 times that amount. You can't be serious, Patricia whispered. You tried to destroy my home, I said, my voice steady. You gave me 24 hours to erase my family's history. So yes, Mrs. Caldwell, I'm absolutely serious. The new lease rate will be market rate for luxury residential development, and it's non-negotiable. Tom handed her another document. This is the new water rights lease agreement. Mr. Rivera is willing to sign a 10-year contract at the updated rates, payable monthly to account for inflation adjustments. Sign it, and the water keeps flowing. Refuse, and he'll exercise his legal right to redirect the water back to agricultural use only. Patricia stared at the document like it might bite her. The HOA will fight this. Go ahead, I said. But while you're fighting, every home in Silverdale Heights will be without water. I wonder how that will affect your property values. I wonder how many lawsuits the HOA will face from 847 angry homeowners. She looked at her demolition crew, then at my house, then back at me. The calculation in her eyes was almost visible. How much? She finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. About $48,000 per month for the entire development, Tom said. Quite reasonable, actually, given the alternative. Patricia's pen scratched across the signature line with the sound of utter defeat. As the demolition trucks pulled away and Patricia's BMW disappeared down my driveway, I sat on my porch with a glass of my grandfather's whiskey. The ranch house stood solid behind me, exactly as it had for over a century. Tom joined me, accepting a glass. You know, he said, you could have asked for more. I didn't do this for money, I replied, watching the sun climb higher over the valley. I did it because some things, family, heritage, history, can't be bulldozed just because someone thinks they're inconvenient. The monthly payments started arriving like clockwork. The HOA sent them with mechanical precision, never a day late. Patricia Caldwell resigned as president within a month, citing personal reasons. The new president reached out with an apology and an invitation to their summer barbecue. I declined politely. 6 months later, I used some of the lease payments to restore the ranch house, new paint, new roof, preserving every original detail. It looked exactly as it had in the photographs from 1897, but stronger, ready for another century. And every evening, I sit on that wraparound porch, watching the sunset over the valley, knowing that some legacies can't be erased in 24 hours or ever. The water still flows to Silverdale Heights, and every month, their payment reminds them that respect and decency aren't suggestions. They're requirements. The brass property markers still rest in their original positions, cleaned and polished now. Permanent reminders of a simple truth. Heritage isn't just what we inherit. It's what we're willing to fight to preserve. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't destruction. It's making sure the people who wronged you pay for their mistakes, literally, every single month, for years to come. My grandfather would have approved.